morning, everybody. I'm CJ Wendell from Time by Design. I wanted to take a moment and share with you an experience that I had over the weekend. My wife had a family member on her side of the family pass away, and so we traveled down to Georgia for the funeral services and celebration of life. I learned so much through that experience, just all of the opportunities that we had in terms of catching up with family and truly understanding the impact that her aunt had, not only on everyone that was there to celebrate her life, but also the impact that she had on everybody that she touched. We found out some things about her, which first of all, were just mind-blowing. She was truly an incredible woman, one that was not focused on material possessions, although she did attain many of the goals that she set out for, but one that was actually more focused on making sure that she was able to plant seeds into others' lives that would germinate, grow, and then produce fruit, ultimately producing more seeds for generations to come. She was such a visioneer of family. It was truly a blessing for me, but it also saddened me at the same time to know, once we heard all of these things, that I did not take the chance or make it an intention to get to know her better than I did. What I found out, she did all of the great things that she was able to do from the back seat, not from the front seat. She was able to impact people's lives, not as a front man, not as a hype man, but as someone in the background, making sure that all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, making sure that when someone left her, that she had impacted them the best that she knew how. And she was always leading people toward God. And I tell you, that's just, the things I found out about her were so impactful to me that it really, on the way home, I thought about this thing over and over and over and over, and it became an obsession on the way home, that I really need to be intentional about the relationships that I currently have, and certainly relationships that I will procure and develop in the future, making sure that I really dig and show concern in people's lives. Not saying that knowing these things about her would have made me more inclined to go and visit her more and more. It might have, but just to make that realization in my own life, to say, wow, I'm sure there are stories that belong to people around me that I just don't have any idea about, not because they haven't shared them or that they're not willing to share them, but more importantly because I haven't asked. And so now I've really began to implement that into my life as part of my daily habits, is just inquiring. I want to inquire about people. I want to know more about the people that I say that I know, but there's so much about them that I don't know. Now, moving forward, sorry for the sidebar, but I felt that was very important, an important lesson that I was exposed to over the weekend, and I encourage everyone to do the same, because you don't want to wait until someone dies to hear all these great things about them and then realize that you lost the opportunity to share these things with them and to find out more about their lives while they were still here, so that we can in turn show the appreciation and let them know how valuable that they truly are to us. So moving on, I was on the way back. My wife had forgotten her wallet, so she was not able to share the driving responsibilities with me. Now, we had picked up a sister of the aunt who passed away, which is obviously another aunt. We had picked her up in Charlotte and taken her down so that she could take part in the celebration of life services for her sister. And on the way back, she had fallen asleep. The kids were in the back seat. My wife was in the back seat. She was on her phone as well, but probably watching tutorials. She is a tutorial head whenever it comes to her craft and the type of work that she does, and she's always in a mode of self-teaching and learning, which I respect thoroughly. Because of the location of the repass being in Covington, Georgia, the GPS had us coming across Interstate 20. So we took I-20 across, we went through Augusta. We went from Augusta to Columbia, South Carolina. Then we caught I-77 headed north. Now, by the time we hit Columbia, after 3 18-plus hour days, my mind and my mental capacity had began to dwindle, and I was becoming exhausted, not just physically, but also mentally. You know, having a death in the family is mentally exhausting and draining enough, dealing with everything that entails and the different emotions that are involved, not just within yourself, but then also interacting with everyone around you, especially if you have any sort of empathy or are empathetic in any specific way. You know, the emotion and vibe of all of that can, in fact, affect you, and it does me. And so, you know, we had the time factor of exhaustion, and we had the emotional and mental factor of exhaustion as well. We hit Columbia, headed north on Interstate 77. The sign that I read said Charlotte 100 miles. Whenever I'm on a journey or a trip, I just like to see the end goal. I see Charlotte, which Even when we got to Charlotte, we still had an hour left or so of driving before we got to our house. We were just dropping off beyond. But Charlotte was my goal. And man, to be honest, 100 miles seemed like so long. I could feel my body begin to get anxious when I saw that 100 miles. It was kind of like a kick in the gut because it felt like I did not have it in me to make it that far. And so the sign that I had read said Charlotte 100 miles, but the city above it, or the town above it, it was Winsboro or Winnesboro, but that was only 15 miles away. And so I said to myself, okay, CJ, you're just gonna focus on Winnesboro. That's your goal right now. And so I did. I focused on Winnesboro. And after a couple songs on iTunes that I was listening to had went by, I started looking for Winnesboro, and I'm looking, I can't find it, and I realized I had already passed it. Because the next sign came up, and I believe the next town was Great Falls or something to that effect. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure that was it. But the point is, there was another town between myself and Charlotte. And so that town was 20 or so miles away. Now granted, Charlotte was still 85 miles. When you're driving on a trip, you know, that's a strong hour and some change on the interstate, 85 miles getting to Charlotte. But I saw that Great Falls city was 20 miles away. And so what I did was I made the Great Falls town my next goal. And I did that for every town that was between myself and Charlotte that came up on the sign, the distance sign. And you know what? By the time I made it to Charlotte, it seemed like it was one of the easiest trips to Charlotte that I had ever made. In fact, it almost seemed like I just snapped my fingers and it was that quick I was there. It really astounded me. Once I had made that turn onto 77 and saw that 100 miles, I felt defeated. But because I changed my perspective, everything changed. I started thinking about it and I was thinking, what other areas can I apply this concept to in my life? Now I know with long-term goal setting, sometimes, depending on the gravity of the long-term goal itself, they can seem extremely overwhelming. Sometimes they can seem impossible, or what we have been told is impossible. To be quite honest though, if your long-term goals in that regard are not pushing you beyond the level of comfortability, if they're not scaring you a little bit, then you have to ask, are the goals big enough? Now, granted, some of the goals that I put out there are extremely lofty to my mind capacity right now. Now, I know as I begin to grow and develop more and more every day, they will begin to seem like they are not such a huge goal. But for example, one of the goals that I have, 10-year goals that I have, is being able to impact 30 million people through the Time by Design program by the year 2030. Now, a lot of people would hear, wow, 30 million people, like million, like 100,000 times 10 times 30? And I agree, that's a lot of people. But the thing that I found is, when I started thinking about it, you know, my first goal was by 2025 to impact worldwide 500,000 people through the Time by Design program. I think that 500,000, and I say, okay, if each of them through the next year, 2026, affect one person, well then we'll be at 1 million. And then if each of those affect one person by 2027, well then we'll be at 2 million. And if each of those affect one person by 2028, and so you can see how through the concept of multiplication, not addition, those 30 million people could be affected by 2030. Now, in all of that, I know without a doubt that the 500,000 who are graduates of the Time by Design program will have their lives so revolutionized, will have their lives changed in such a major way that, number one, they're going to be telling everybody that they know about this opportunity. They should be. I mean, it's exciting. We should want other people to have success, the same success or better that we are able to achieve. But the other regard to it is this, and that is, there's a magnetism about success. When you are around a successful person, you're automatically magnetized to them. I can't explain it. It's just like, it's like you're drawn to them. And I think it has something to do with a fundamental level of the fact that we know, even subconsciously, that they have a map to get to where we want to go, where we think we want to go at the time. And so I say that to say this, it won't be just one person that each person is able to impact, because yes, they'll be telling everyone, but more importantly, they will have people who are taking notice of their results, who are going to desire similar results and therefore seek them out. I know that to be true because that's what I do. When I see someone that's successful in an area that I want to be successful in, do whatever I can to put myself in the presence of that person so I can glean from them and find out things about them. Which kind of goes back to the first part about digging into the lives of people that you know, because you truly don't know what they have in terms of value that you could utilize until you begin to ask those questions. So, getting back to the long-term goal setting. As I'm driving, the realization came to me as I started to knock down one short-term goal after another short-term goal after another short-term goal. What astounded me about it was that because of my focus on the short-term towns that I was going to, 15 miles here, 20 miles there, blah, 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 because of my focus on those, I always knew I had to reach Charlotte, and Charlotte was, in fact, the end goal. But to do that, I would need to accomplish several short-term goals. And so in life, whenever we're talking about short-term and long-term goals, I need to go ahead and start dissecting my long-term goals. I need to take them and say, okay, I know this is a 10-year goal, but how does this break down year by year? And how will I be able to create these small digestible bites to where by the time I'm done with these small bites, the entire steak is gone. I'm not just trying to shove a whole T-bone in my mouth. You know, I won't be trying to shove a whole T-bone in my mouth, but the T-bone will be completely eaten because I'm eating it in small digestible amounts. When I started grabbing a hold of that mentally last night, I started to get excited because if I can then turn around and show someone else how to take their goal, whether it's financial or family or business or personal, but if we can identify through the Time by Design program where exactly they are and truly where it is that they want to go, so we have a starting point and an ending point. What I'm talking about is filling all the dots in between out. Create mini goals or mini markers that allows us to not only achieve these things and make progress toward our long-term goal, but the accomplishment of the short-term goals themselves are huge confidence boosters. I mean, enormous confidence boosters. Think about a to-do list. Even if you just get up and you have a to-do list, it could be something simple like things you know you're going to do anyway, but like brush your teeth, get dressed, things we teach kids to do. And when you set it up on a to-do list, then hey, as we're going through the day and we do these simple things, we check them off one by one. And what that does is psychologically, it creates a feeling of accomplishment. It makes us feel like we're actually making progress, which we are. We're just keeping better track of the progress that we're making. So when it feels like we're not making any progress during the day, we can turn around and look at our list and say, well, of course I'm making progress right here. Look at all the things that I've gotten done. So we'll take that same concept and we're going to put it to our long-term goals so that as we check off these milestones and these mile markers little by little, when it doesn't feel like we're making any progress towards these astronomical goals that we've set, we have verifiable documentation that we can turn around and look at and say, hey, I know that I don't feel like I'm making it very far or that I'm closing in on my goal, but I've got proof right here. I am making progress. And I'm not where I was yesterday. I'm not where I was a week ago or a month ago. No, I'm not where I really want to be, which is the complete realization, though we have to respect this process. But I am further than I was. And that's what we're wanting to do here. We're wanting to make proof of progress. Because not only does that help us psychologically, but it's also verifiable proof that we literally are making progress toward our long-term goal. Now, what greater gift could you give to someone than a map of how to get to and achieve their long-term goals? Quite frankly, I can't think of one. Whatever their goal may be, whether it's business, personal, relational, financial, whatever the goal may be. Through the program, we can identify where they are, where it is that they're wanting to go, break it down into smaller digestible segments, begin developing plans of execution and an action plan that will propel us further and further toward our long-term goal. I am living proof that this program works amongst everybody else that's involved in the program. But I can tell you without a doubt and with all conviction that if you take the program like it is and you work it and you use the tools that have been designed, it may seem silly at first, but the building of the habitual nature of the program will allow you to accomplish all of the goals and all of the dreams that you have purposed for your life. And remember, a goal and a dream does no one any good except for yourself, unless that goal or dream is designed to last longer than your life will last. Hope you'll have a blessed day.